So we are looking at chapter 7 here of our WLS manual. This is going to be our 6th day. And so we are taking a look at basic training methodologies for weight loss. So we are going to dive a little bit into the OPT model today, which is great. And then we're going to use that to kind of frame up everything. But really what we're focusing on, like the end message for today is like, we're just trying to find as many effective strategies for burning as many calories as possible. Like, what can you do to increase caloric expenditure during your sessions? And, it's little tiny adjustments, as much as like, keeping somebody on their feet the whole time, or finding a way to like vary your intensity so that somebody doesn't get super exhausted, they can continue working. So after this section, we'll be able to understand and communicate the idea of using cardio and resistance training both to accomplish your weight loss goals. We're going to look at like how we can kind of combine different styles of each of those training together. Be familiar with different training methodologies that do assist in weight loss. So like, increasing caloric expenditure in one way or another. And then implement a weight loss program, that involves strength training and cardio. So weight loss is definitely the leading reason why most folks come to the gym. We definitely know that it is most of our clients' primary goal, right? Not that there isn't like people who are coming to improve athleticism, or people who are coming to gain muscle, or people who are coming to increase their health and lower their blood pressure and things like that. But weight loss tends to be like the number one thing that we tend to see in our industry. And so we know that like our job is to emphasize the importance of exercise and regular activity, and help our clients come up with strategies that can, increase their weight loss. And one of those strategies is to enhance their what is called EPOC, or excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, which we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about today. So once we've kind of talked a lot about that, then we can also complement dietary strategies into that as well. So we can help our clients, everything that we talked about yesterday, eating small snacks and things like that in order to, fight off hunger, and making sure that our clients are not using too much willpower, making sure that like our programs are easy to follow and like promote success rather than feel like a constant uphill battle, So weight loss and composition changes. I love this. This part's kind of cool. I think that the science behind this is interesting. And so we know that like diet alone can result in weight loss. However, what we're going to see is diet alone, 1 pound lost is going to be equivalent to 69% fat, with the remaining, and you know what, actually, what should I do? Yeah, let's talk about this first. Okay, so there's a really fun bit like right in the very beginning of this chapter. It's one of my favorite parts of the entire book, actually, because it kind of highlights just how important and how good strength training really is. And so what we've seen is that in programs that have like diet alone, generally you get about like a 70-30 split of like weight loss being like 70% fat, 30% muscle. So if you lost like 1 pound of weight, you end up losing like 0.7 pounds of fat, or 0.69 pounds of fat, and you lose 0.31 pounds of lean body mass, right? Which is a bummer, because like that 0.31% body mass, lean body mass is that metabolically active tissue. We know that muscle burns a lot more calories. And so when we see a fat loss like that, or we see a weight loss like that, right, it helps and hurts us simultaneously, right? It gets us closer to our goal, but it makes it harder to maintain our goal because we're not burning as much energy. So how do we maintain our muscle mass as effectively as possible? Well, we start challenging the body physically. So then, like, let's say we just start taking another really common approach to weight loss, which is, sorry, I'm getting distracted again. I can't help it. I just see the street and somebody is pouring some stuff near my roommate's car. And I think it's because we got mosquitoes in this like gutter. These guys just looks like they're about to like doing stuff to our cars, but they're not. Anyway, so dieting coupled with cardio. So cardio, it's not strength training, right? But it does create like some muscular damage. And so what we have seen there is that like a 78% mass loss from fat and 22% from lean muscle, which is better, right? That's definitely a much better ratio. We lose 0.78 pounds of fat and we only lose 0.22 pounds of lean mass. But then we have resistance training on top of that. And when you couple resistance training with your calorie restriction, a lot of times we can see a loss for every lean pound of mass, 97% of it originating from fat, with only 3% of it originating from muscle. And the reason for that is because like you're going to damage your muscle, which your body's going to take time to repair, which triggers your physiologic, a physiologic effort to keep that muscle around. Like clearly you're using it, we need to keep this, right? And so through resistance training, what's nice about this is like, if you, let's say you did lose, let's say you lost, 100 pounds, right? So if you look at that, like, so through resistance training, it may be sufficient to raise your resting metabolic rate by 7%, which is about like an extra 100 calories each day. And that can be equal to like 10 pounds over the course of a year, right? So if you can actually gain muscle mass, it can be a huge, huge, huge metabolic benefit. Whereas like losing muscle mass can, result in you losing metabolic efficiency. If you lose 100 calories a day, that's, like I said, that's 100 pounds over the course of a year if you're not adjusting your caloric intake. And most of our clients, like, that's not the way they're kind of going about things, right? So diet alone can result in weight loss, right? But I'm going to put a little table in here. Let's see here. So we'll have like so diet alone, diet plus cardio, and diet plus exercise. Yeah, what's up, Irene?
Yeah, I was wondering how much % of water is in the fat and the muscle?
In water, not very much, but in fat, lots. Whoops, oh my God. In fat, not very much. In muscle, lots. There's very, very little water content in your fat tissue, which is why bioelectric impedance assessments work, right? When you're doing that body fat analyzer, there's not very much, it's measuring like how much water it can travel through. And so if it is traveling through a tissue that doesn't have very much water, it's measuring body fat. So we're definitely going to experience like, when you like measure your lean body mass loss, there are times where like, yeah, you're measuring water loss. And that'll happen sometimes. Like this is why if you ever want to like throw off a body fat percentage scale, I had a student who was like doing a weight loss challenge, and they were like, hey, how can I boost my chances here? And I was like, well, you can, and this is like, all theory. I was like, this needs to be theoretical because some of this is not very safe. But I was like, if you can dehydrate before you go in and take your initial test, yeah, I know. That can result in like your pound, like you'll appear like much higher body fat percentage. And then when it comes time to actually take your final results, like make sure you're plenty hydrated. And that will boost your lean body mass, which will lower your body fat percentage. So, all right, so with diet alone, we're going to see, so 69% fat loss with 31% lean mass loss. And then we'll see 78% fat loss and 22% lean mass loss. And then over here, we'll see 97 and 3. Yeah.
You got some of that winning money after that person won that challenge, right?
I don't know if they did. This was like, it was so funny. It was right before COVID happened. This is like, I mean, like she was like graduating, and Yeah, I have no idea. I'm so curious if she did well. It was like, I mean, it was a good chunk of change. I think it was like $5,000. And it was like a photo. There's like a photo aspect to it and all this other stuff. Um, and she has like a home gym, so she like posts on Instagram all the time about like how hard she's working out and stuff. Um, awesome. So, all right. So so we know that like, if we go back and look at this just really quick, we know that, through resistance training, it's possible to raise our metabolic rate and raise our metabolism. How do we do that in the short term? Well, that comes down to my favorite concept that I always talk about, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. So, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, is going to be a phenomenon that represents one's basic activities of daily living and includes fidgeting, standing, and moving around. So what's really interesting about NEAT, right, is that like when you hear people say like, oh, don't go on a super restricted calorie diet, like man, you see it on YouTube all the time. There's this like one particular YouTuber who's like, he's always talking about how like you should never do cardio and like you shouldn't diet, like you should eat whatever you want, because like if you don't, it's going to slow your metabolism down. And it's like, he's not actually like, the advice that he's giving is not necessarily that terrible. Like a lot of people overdo it on cardio and it causes problems. A lot of people adjust their diets to like super low calories and it becomes a problem. But like the way he markets it drives me crazy. Like I always get annoyed when I hear people say like it ruins your metabolism. And it's like, your metabolism is like your cells burning energy, like and doing all the normal metabolic stuff that they do. Now, that being said, if you think of like that's what actual metabolism is. But if you think of like metabolism as like the number of calories you burn in a day, yes, that does slow down. But it doesn't slow down because like your cells are, suddenly going like and just like slowing. What they're doing is your body is finding ways to make you a little more tired. And so like you're more likely to sit, you're less likely to fidget, and so you end up like slowing down slowly throughout the day. And they've done a couple interesting versions of this study here, where they have like looked at people and they've like measured how much they slow, and like they've actually found that sometimes people who work out really, really hard will actually burn less calories on days that they work out super hard compared to days that they were totally inactive. They burned more calories on those inactive days, which is crazy when you think about it, because it's like the whole point of working out is to like create this super big calorie burn. But you end up getting so exhausted that your body naturally slows you down. And sometimes it's conscious, like I said, like I've mentioned the example a million times before, where it's like you choose not to take the stairs, or and instead you take the elevator, or you park really close to the front door, or whatever. Like I've used those examples before, but like what about all the things that we're not really conscious of measuring, where it's like you're not bouncing your leg up and down, you're not fidgeting inside of your seat. All of those little like changes lower your caloric burn over the course of a day in response to a decreased caloric intake and an increased caloric expenditure. So your body finds a way to balance things out. And now you're like, why isn't this weight loss program working? I'm eating the number of calories I'm supposed to be eating. I'm going to the gym every day like I was told. Like, why am I not doing this? And so now the job becomes less about like writing an effective workout, or coming up with a healthy diet, and more about like finding ways to increase your overall activity in your lifestyle. And so there are some tools out there that can be kind of helpful. One of my favorite tools for this is actually to get my clients like Fitbits. I've been a big proponent of this for a long time, which is really funny because like I think sometimes it's so hokey when you hear somebody that's like, I got to get my 10,000 steps in a day. For the record though, this is actually kind of fun. The whole 10,000 steps thing was originally created just as a marketing ploy. Somebody was like, hey, they invented the pedometer. I think it was invented in Japan. And they invented the pedometer, and they're like, how do we sell this? And it's like, oh, we'll just tell people they need to get, big round number, 10,000 steps in a day. And so they like picked a number at random, and then they told everybody that that's the number you need to get per day. And so like it was like that for years and years and years and years and years. And then finally, a group was like, all right, well, let's test this out. Like, a group of like, scientist debunkers, right? They're like ruiners like me. They're like, all right, we're going to tear this concept down. Like, what's the scientific evidence behind your 10,000 steps? How'd you come up with that number? And they're like, it's like we picked it at random. But here's the thing. I love this so much. They tested like a bunch of large groups, and they found that sure enough, around 10,000 steps is actually kind of the magic number. Like they picked it at random to sell pedometers, but then it ended up being pretty darn close to accurate. It ended up being like, if you can get 10,000 steps consistently, you end up about hitting your 150 minutes of moderate activity exercise per week. And so that's like one of my it's like one of my favorite like weird little stories. Now, to be fair, like, this is, they were looking specifically at pedometers. So like, that could definitely be fudged in a million different ways. And like, you're only looking at one piece of data, which is never a great way to look at things. But like, still, I think that that's like a really funny story, how it's like, man, they picked it at random and they ended up getting it right. So pedometers are a really great way to ensure that your client is getting enough NEAT. I've actually noticed this in myself sometimes, where like I've had just like a really hard workout. Usually on when I'm doing like powerlifting routines, I'm lifting really, really, really heavy for like a large number of sets. It's funny, I leave the gym and I'm like, that wasn't, my muscles aren't really sore as they would be, because it's really much more of a nervous system thing. It's a max strength thing more than it is like a muscle thing. And so like I'll leave the gym and I'm like, that wasn't too bad, but my brain will be exhausted. Like my nervous system's kind of worn out. And then like I'll notice it's like, man, I kind of have been sitting around all day, and I'll look and I'll just be like, holy crap, I've got 700 steps in for the day. Like just a super low number. That's a crazy exaggeration, but like, it's nuts. Like these little tiny adjustments you don't realize that you're missing on. So, helping your clients increase their NEAT is a big part of our job, like encouraging your client to take the stairs, park far away in a parking lot, carry your groceries in, in multiple trips if need be. Never. Go for a walk regularly, like all those things. Like don't let your dog out into the backyard, take your dog for a walk, little like changes like that are great ways to ensure that you're enhancing your NEAT. And so let's put our own little definition up here just to really drive this point home. It is all the calories and individual burns throughout the day that isn't related to exercise, right? So we can increase we can park far away from the destination, ensure you're getting, you're tracking your daily energy expenditure through things like pedometers, right? Now remember, pedometers they're nice and all, but they're not good at tracking everything. Like they're used to track your steps. That's all they do. So they're not perfect, but it's just like one more little piece of data, take the stairs. Actually, I'm gonna put that one. Take the stairs. One. So that's a really good one as well. Now, when it comes to resistance training, which we know is very, very effective at building muscle and burning massive amounts of calories. When it comes to resistance training for weight loss, we're primarily going to focus on like total body training. because total body exercise tends to burn more calories rather than just isolation movements. And so we're going to focus a lot on what we call compound lifts. Compound lifts are using multiple joints simultaneously. Look, I like bicep curls too, but this is one joint using one set of muscles, right? Whereas like if I do like a reverse lunge to balance with a curl to, shoulder press, right? Like an exercise like this is going to be using my entire body from top to bottom, right? And that is going to burn a lot more calories and take the same amount of time, 3 sets of 12 for both those exercises. It's a little longer just because, we got long arms and legs. So we love total body training. This is one of our best tools in our toolkit. So total body training, right? It implies the use of compound exercises where several joints and muscle groups are trained simultaneously in one exercise. So we've got a couple really fun examples here. We've got a dumbbell squat to overhead press, which is a classic NASM. They love that exercise. Even just a regular old thruster, dumbbell thrusters, where you just have 2 dumbbells here and you just go into that squat and press, right? That's a great exercise. One of my favorites is like a bent over a deadlift to bent over row. Who it is? Is this a person? Well, a student. So that's a really great one, right? Where you would actually like have dumbbells in your hand and you would hinge, row, and then stand, hinge, row, and then stand, right? That's a great compound movement where you're using multiple muscles per exercise, multiple muscles per repetition, right? Walking lunge to lateral raise. That's a really good one, right? Just as you're like doing like a lunging movement, you're raising your arms up. That's a relatively like small compound lift. I mean, like the lunges are great, but like these are little tiny muscles, but still, it's great. We know that like total body training does so much for us, right? Not only does it, just so I can have this a little cleaner, total body exercise examples, just so I can have this on another line. Boop, boop, boop. So we know that like it increases caloric burn. And also we know that like multi-joint and compound lifts have been shown to increase testosterone and growth hormone levels, which is great for men and women alike, right? We know that like our body tends to, multi-joint is not, we know that our body tends to respond really well hormonally to these types of exercises. So that's a really great style of training that is effective for weight loss, right? And actually, I'm going to title that. I'm going to put that as a section header as well. I'm sorry, I'm modifying the notes here. Resistance training options for, programming options. There we go. That'll work really well. So total body training, that is one of the best tools in our tool belt for weight loss. Now, that's not necessarily the greatest way to carve out your muscles, right? Like if you are trying to get specific definition on thing, well, if you're trying to get definition in your chest, you need to do exercises for your chest, and you kind of need to make sure that you're working them as hard as you can. So that means an isolation exercise, right? A chest press. And I love the chest press. I think it's a great exercise. I love the bench press. All those are great. But they just don't burn as many calories as something like a reverse lunge to, balance with cable chest press, I'm not able to work my chest as hard as I would have with a total body exercise like that, but I am able to, you know, get a really big calorie burn and get a really big, like, you know, testosterone boost and things like that, which have just been shown to be very good for busting fat. Now, another really good programming option is going to be power training. Okay, so power training is going to be training that emphasizes eccentric lengthening followed by rapid concentric shortening. So power training is just one of those things that can burn a super high number of calories because it results in like a really big recruitment of your type 2 muscle fibers, right? So examples of power exercises are things like, I love this, the dumbbell push press. So a dumbbell push press is where you would actually have dumbbells at your side here. You would go into a little tiny like half squat, and then you would actually use your legs to explosively throw those dumbbells up, right? And so you actually go and drive it down, which creates an eccentric lengthening action so that you can rapidly concentrically explode out of that. Love it. It's great. Other really fun, just like power exercises are medicine ball. Oh God, what's the real name? I just call them wall balls. Medicine ball, yeah, wall balls, which is a squat to explosive press. So that's actually what's that?
Wall ball is the correct term.
Yeah, that's the term I noticed. I knew Madison's got another name.
Yeah.
I just can't remember what they call it.
Oh, okay.
I got dumb names running around.
Okay.
But yeah, so you would hold a medicine ball, and you'd want one of the big slam balls, because like if you're using like the rubber ones, you never know how much they're gonna bounce, and that can get kind of dangerous with your clients. You want to use the big ones, and so then like you're gonna go down and then explode, and you're gonna throw it up and hit like the wall. It's gonna bounce back. They're gonna catch it, and they're gonna do, you know, those super rapidly. Squat jumps are classic like power exercise as well. Actually, you know what? Just for the sake of it, just so we can get a not squat in there, let's put like a kettlebell swing, right? So these are really great power exercises because they cause a rapid usage of eccentric and concentric movements, which results in a lot of type 2 muscle fibers getting recruited, right? So it targets type 2 muscle fibers, which results in a large caloric burn. Your type 2 muscle fibers, right? They just burn a lot of energy. And we love that, right? That's really what we're going for here. Now, I do want to say you got to be cautious, right? You always want to focus on like safety whenever you are doing power training, because this is very rapid. It is very high impact a lot of times. And so you don't want to just like, you know, have somebody walk into the gym and they're like, I'm here for weight loss. And you're like, great. And then just put them into a power routine, right? You want to build them up. Start with like a total body stabilization routine, and then a little bit of reactive training built into your movement prep. And then eventually you're going to transfer into doing like regular power exercises for a small cycle. And that's going to maximize calorie burn. Make sure clients have proper levels of stability and strength before engaging in a power routine. So now if we kind of look at this, like if we were just to stop here, and we're going to keep going, there's more things to talk about because we can combine all of them. If we were just to look at these two principles here, we know that total body training is very effective, and we know that power training is effective. We can already start to visualize what 3 phases of the OPT are going to be most effective for our client, right? I'm probably going to start my client in phase 1, stabilization, and I'm going to focus on total body exercises, right? Everything from, you know, resistance bands or cable machine rows where they're staying upright and on their feet the entire time, using compound lifts, to dumbbells, where they're traveling and using compound lifts. You know, step up to scaption, step up to bicep curl to shoulder press. You know, a lot of different options there. Lateral lunge to upright row. You know, like little movements like that that involve lots and lots and lots. Meanwhile, since they're in stabilization, I'm going to have them balancing as often as possible, like coming up to one leg, which you probably can't see, as often as we can, right? If let's say I am doing like an isolation exercise, maybe I do only want to work their shoulders all by themselves. Cool, I can do that like this, right? And then I'm just getting a little bit of an increased caloric burn because I am standing on one leg. So now I've focused on stability. And then the next month, I can keep working on total body, but I can then just take everything down to 2 legs. And I can start working a little bit more on their strength. And so now I'm building up proper stability and proper strength, which is going to assist me when I get to power in a little bit. So now, rather than doing like a lunge to balance or a step up to balance, now I'm just doing my compound lifts, like a step up, rather than like a step up to balance, which is stepping, going something like this. It would just be a step up to 2 legs down, right? And then they can continue doing those compounds, right? Once I've built up that strength, now I can focus on doing those power movements, right? And I have proper levels of both, which is going to assist me. I've learned how to recruit my type 2 muscle fibers, but now I'm going to learn how to recruit my type 2 muscle fibers quickly. So another thing that's very effective, and this can be applied to any type of programming, is circuit training. Right, and so circuit training is going to be a series of exercises performed back to back with no rest, with little to no rest in between. Oh, I should have said minimal rest. That's what they said there. So an example, so there are no like circuit exercises, right? That's not really how this works. Instead, you can perform any exercises you want, but it would be something like this. It'd maybe be like a push-up to bent over row, followed by a shoulder press, followed by a goblet squat, followed by 60 seconds rest, and then it'd be like, I don't know, repeats for a total of 3 rounds at 12 repetitions each, right? Actually, no, I don't need to really put that up there. But there's a good example of like a circuit, right? You know, you perform each exercise back to back to back to back to back with as little rest as possible. And this is great. This has like a lot of really, really great benefits. Example, circuit. You know what? I'm gonna make a slight adjustment here. I'm gonna make sure the example, let's go, stabilization. Let's do one for each. So here's a really good circuit training style for each of our phases, right? Let's say this is like a stabilization client. You would start with something like a push-up, and then you could do a single leg bent over row, single leg shoulder press, and then we can do a Bosu ball squat, and then 60 seconds rest, right? And then let's build like a strength version. We're gonna pick the exact same thing, but instead it'll be a chest press followed by bent over barbell row, followed by military press, followed by front squats. Rough. And then we'll do an power one. And that's going to be medicine ball chest pass, medicine ball slam. Whoops, nope, no. wall ball, followed by squat jumps. 60 seconds rest. And there we go. So that's a really great way. These are like different versions of circuits for each thing, but they go in the same order, right? It goes chest to upper back to shoulders to legs, right? Pretty simple stuff. And so I could put my client through 2 or 3 of those. I also could have just, instead of going like chest, back, legs, you know, I could very, very easily have just picked total body movements the entire time, right? I could pick, you know, in my power phase, if I really wanted to be super explosive, I could pick things like burpees. In my strength phase, if I really wanted to be like, you know, recruiting a lot of type 2 muscle fibers, I could do like a front squat to push press. In my, you know, stabilization routine, I very easily could have done a reverse lunge to balance with bicep curl to shoulder press, you know? It gets really fun to try to write all that stuff in the little tiny boxes that we template when you do like a lot of compound lifts. It's like, good luck fitting it. That's why I do most of mine on the computer, because it automatically like makes the lines bigger. So those are good examples of circuit training, right? The big objective here is to incorporate both cardio and resistance training, right? Trains the cardiorespiratory system at the same time as working on strength training. And we have seen that like circuits reduce your risk of like cardiovascular disease. Circuit training has been directly linked to cardiovascular health. And really the reason for that is just because you are working your entire body simultaneously. And so your blood vessels have to get really good at pumping blood everywhere, you know? I really like high to low training as well. I really like what we call like a variation of circuit training, which is called peripheral heart action, where you go upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. And what that does is that opens up all these blood vessels. So your body does all that, and then it closes them down because it has to open up all the blood vessels here. And so you do basically reps for your vascular system. But circuit training that uses like total body movements and compound lifts have also just been linked directly to a lot of cardiovascular health. So we like both of those. We like both the versions where we're going big with everything, and we also like to be very targeted up and down. What's up, Irene? Question?
Yeah, does it have to be in those categories, or can you mix like 2 from like stabilization with 1 power? Like you can mix it up in any way.
Oh, totally, yeah. We call it a blended routine. And 9 out of 10 programs you write will actually be blended routines, if I'm being honest. But we don't, you know, part of preparing for your NASM is being able to identify the right exercises for the right client.
Got it.
So we very much in the core especially, I don't let you guys do very many blended routines. It's all very like stabilization, strength, power. You know, it's all very, very, very structured. You'll have more room for like that kind of stuff when you get to mode, because that's meant to kind of simulate the real world. But like if you're trying to learn the difference between stabilization, strength, and power, you know, it's just much easier to keep the ideas like totally separate and learn them in isolation. But yeah, in the real world, you'll end up blending this stuff all the time. NASM will cringe when they hear me say that, because like the idea is that your stabilization is your foundation for your strength is your foundation for your power. So it's safest to do them like this, from what we have observed. But I mean, there's just so many times where like you're doing some stabilization stuff and then, you know, you just don't have like the piece of equipment you need, and there's like a strength version of an exercise like right next to you, and it's like, all right, we're gonna do this. You know, like I'm actually gonna do this month actually, because I haven't done barbell training in a while, thanks to, you know, the world ending. This Monday I'm starting like a barbell routine, which is all very strength based, but I'm going to do it at a 4-2-1 tempo, which is very much a stabilization thing. So I'm kind of, you know, mixing the 2 concepts together there. And that way I can just kind of give my brain a little bit of time to be like, hey, remember how to do this? which is probably a little overly cautious, but at the same time, I haven't done 4-2-1 tempo in like 6 months, so it'll be nice to kind of get back to that. Okay, so now we got some other fun stuff. This is one that you guys haven't heard before, which is going to be metabolic resistance training. So this is as close to NASM gets as CrossFit, or to CrossFit rather. This is like where the two worlds kind of come together actually. Maybe not necessarily just CrossFit, but group exercise. So this is where I really like metabolic resistance training just because it's so creative and fun compared to some of our traditional circuit training. So a lot of this is just going to be some fun variations. So metabolic resistance training is just a term. It's not anything special. It's an all-encompassing term to define any workout that involves high work rate type activities. Right? Which means exercises that have super high repetition counts, coupled with little to no rest. So this is like your boot camp. This is like your CrossFit hero workouts, you know? So we're gonna see a couple fun versions of this. I really like these because these can often be very creative and fun workouts that involve a lot of mental challenge. That's what I really like about this. These are often very, very mentally stimulating. So the three of these that we're going to see, and actually it's not in the PowerPoint, so I'm going to have to dive into the text real quick, are going to be things like multi-planar sets. So I got to open this up real quick. Okay, so multi-planar sets are actually going to build training volume by performing a movement in all planes, okay? So this is going to be a set, multiple sets that build training volume by moving through multiple planes of motion. So what a multiplanar set would be, this is kind of fun. I really like these because they're really just mentally stimulating. It's like you're going to teach your client, it's like, all right, so we are going to do a lunge to bicep curl. And they're like, great, let's do it. And it's like, all right, so your first set is going to look like this. I want you to do we're going to do 3 sets. Our first set is going to be a lunge to bicep curl just like this. You're going to go and then curl, and you're going to go down, and you're going to curl. That's 1. We're going to do 12 of those. Got it? So then you instruct your client to go. And then like as they are resting, you're going to explain your next set. And you're going to go, okay, now we're going to do the lunge to curl again, only this time, instead of moving through the sagittal plane, we're going to move through the frontal plane. So you're still going to do a lunge, but now you're doing it in a different plane of motion. So now you're going to lunge out. I'm in socks on a hardwood floor. And you're going to come up like this. Woo, I'm glad I didn't need it there. You're going to do a lateral lunge to bicep curl. And they're like, great. So then they do their second set, 12 reps each. And then we're going to do our third set transverse. And so you're going to be facing me, and then you're going to go at a 45-degree angle at the wall behind. And so you're going to turn and open away, depending on what leg. So if I'm lunging forward with my right leg, I'm opening to my right shoulder. If I'm lunging forward with my left, I'm going to open towards my left shoulder. But you're going to go back and lunge, and then bring it back here and get that bicep curl in. And so that's a multi-planar set, and they're super, super, super fun. Love multiplanar sets. Then we've also got things that are called cluster sets. And cluster sets are also really fun. This is the one that actually I always feel like is kind of similar to CrossFit. Has anybody ever tried to do a Murph?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right? I'm still vomiting.
Yep.
That's
like one of the most painful ones.
Yeah, man. So a Murph is a really good example of a cluster set. And the idea is you know, what is it? It's a 300 push-ups, 200 squats, 100 pull-ups. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And then a mile,
100,
a mile
200,
on both
300.
sides.
Yep. Mile in the beginning and a mile at the end.
Yeah. So the reason we're going to refer to that as a cluster set, because here's what you can do. Like if you're doing that in your head, right? What do you guys think the simplest strategy for doing 300 of something, 200 of something, and 100 of something is?
Break it up.
Break
Start
it up.
with the difficult one first.
Yeah. Do 3 squats, 2 push-ups, 1 pull-up, and then just do 10 sets of that, right? That's how you kind of break it down. But here's what happens. Like your legs are maybe a little stronger if you're like me. 300 squats is like piece of cake, but 100 pull-ups is like
Death.
Mount Everest. Like,
Yeah.
look at how long my arms are. Like,
Yeah.
a nightmare. And so like, you know, what
Straight
ends up
death.
happening, what's that, Frankie?
I said straight death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is I'm like, I get my like 3 squats in, I get my 2 push-ups in, and then it's like, I get 1/2, and I was like, crap, I missed it. So then I end up like chunking away, and you got to write all this down. So you're just kind of chipping away at it. I actually like to refer to cluster sets as chipper workouts, where it's like, all right, you're going to do 100 burpees. And people are like, oh God, 100 burpees. I'm like, no, not 100 burpees in a row. You just are going to do as many as you can and chip away until you get to 100. That's a fun cluster set, right? So the idea here is that you are going to complete high volume sets of an exercise while taking whatever needed breaks you have, but you are trying to complete it as quickly as possible, okay? So it's high volume sets where you complete as many repetitions of an exercise as you can until you complete a determined high number of repetitions, right? Like I said, I like to call these chipper workouts. You're really just going to chip away at it until you finish, you know? And so those are kind of fun. And is it the best way to build strength? Definitely not. If you're doing 100 reps of something, the intensity is crazy, crazy low. So it's not the greatest way to build like mass or anything like that, but it is a super awesome calorie burn and it's fun. Fun-ish. And then we've got simple to complex sets. And what these are where you are going to progressively perform more advanced versions of an exercise as you build complexity through the sets. Sometimes these are referred to as like flows. It's getting really popular on YouTube now to come up with these really fun like kettlebell flows that you'll often see. And so it'll be something as simple as like you'll have a kettlebell in your hand and be like, all right, so you're gonna do like a clean. Then you're gonna do like a clean to shoulder press. And then you're gonna do like a clean to shoulder press to like overhead squat. And then you're gonna do like a clean to shoulder press to overhead squat to kettlebell swing. And then you're gonna do like a clean to shoulder press to overhead squat to kettlebell swing to reverse lunge. You know, like it's just where you're building complexity every round, right? Simple to complex sets, if you perform, these are actually a really effective way to teach exercises as well, especially to like senior clients that are sometimes like struggling. What you can do is rather than just doing like that was like simple, that was more like a simple to complex reps. But simple to complex sets would actually be something as simple as like, all right, we're gonna do a dumbbell squat for our first set. You're gonna do 12 repetitions. So like 1, 2, right, they do their 12. Great, rest. All right, rest over. Now you can do those dumbbell squats again, but now we're gonna add in a bicep curl. So you're gonna do your squat and then come up to a curl, right? Awesome. They do 12, rest, great. Now we're gonna do a squat, curl to shoulder press. So you can build complexity from set 1 to set 2 to set 3. Now, again, Are these the greatest way, like, to build strength? Not really, but they're a great way to build mental toughness, and they're a great way to burn a lot of calories while being very, like, intellectually stimulating. Fun thing about, like, these workouts, and I always take this as, like, the biggest compliment that my clients give me, is, like, when they get to the end of their hour-long session and they're like, that was an hour? And you're like, hell yeah, that was an hour. Like, you didn't even realize how much energy you just burned. That's metabolic resistance training. Do you guys have any questions on any of that before we move into the cardio stuff?
No.
Nope.
All right, cardio time. All right, so those are all some really fun resistance training protocols that we can put our clients through. Now let's look at our general cardiorespiratory resistance training programming. Yeah, cardiorespiratory training. I'm just gonna copy this and change that to cardio. All right, so we're back. Fit principles, they're in every mod so many times. Again, this is just a classic example of something that makes really good test questions, so we teach the crap out of it. So your fit principles, right, are a tool used to describe the various various variables. I don't want to say that. The different variables within an effective cardio program. Okay, so you're going to have frequency, which is the number of training sessions in a given time frame. Intensity, right, which is the level of demand of the exercise. Time, which is the length of time spent in the activity. Type, which is going to be the mode of the activity. And enjoyment, which is going to be the level of pleasure derived from the activity. So Irene, you actually asked me earlier, like, how much cardio should you do, right? Well, it's all gonna be based on, like, your fit principles. I know I don't wanna overtrain anybody, right? So I would say, like, frequency, 2 to 3 times per week. Intensity, if you can, 76 to 85% of your max heart rate. The time, about 20 to 30 minutes per session. The type, me personally, I like running, but the type could be on a treadmill or a rowing machine. And then the enjoyment is, like, based on what you've told me, or, it sounds like you're on a running routine and that's, like, stimulating and exciting for you right now. But, like, maybe somebody else is like, I just bought a Peloton bike. Great. Let's use it. Let's, get some enjoyment, and they get you amped up and excited. So really it can be any of those things. But those are basically where, like, I consider, like, fit principles, and those are general guidelines for, like, the minimum of, like, cardiovascular health. If my client was like, I want to train for a marathon, right? Well, then my frequency is still going to be maybe I'd say like 2 to 4 times per week. My intensity is going to be 65 to 75% of your max heart rate, so relatively low. The time is going to be anywhere from, like, 30 minutes up to 2 hours. My type is going to be running because it's a marathon, and the enjoyment is, I'm going to be like, hey, make sure you get out and do some trails. Let's pick your goal is to finish this entire album by, like, this band that just came out. Little fun things like that you can build into your program. So that right there is an example, like especially with both of those are kind of examples of steady state training, right? Where, you're doing, like, specific cardio over a specific period of time. And so like resistance training, we got a lot of different options here. First one we're going to look at is steady state cardio, which is this steady state cardio training, which is this type of cardio that's kind of forgotten about or kind of shunned at this point in the fitness industry. I mean, like, HIIT training has become so popular that nobody you're going to hear that steady state cardio is very bad for you at this point. And there's definitely like, I can understand like where people are coming from with that. Because what you end up doing is you do like low intensity, which recruits like a lot of type 1 fibers, which honestly, it burns calories, but like you're doing it in what is considered a relatively inefficient way. You know, you're burning plenty of calories in your chunk, but you're not exactly burning that many calories per hour compared to like if you were strength training and getting your heart rate super, super jacked up. You know, in order to be able to do steady state training, you have to have your heart rate relatively low. So this is going to be bouts of sustained, steady state or fixed intensity aerobic exercise. And this has like a point, you know, like if you are going to be, you know, if you are going to be like a marathoner, you want to be able to like maintain a consistent pace, you know? And so steady state cardio is going to be very effective. However, if we're trying to be time efficient, which 9 out of 10 times we're going to be, we're going to focus more on aerobic or anaerobic interval training. And so aerobic interval training. So when we hear aerobic, we should be thinking moderate to low intensity. This is going to differs from traditional anaerobic interval training in that it uses longer, more moderate to challenging aerobic work intervals with varying recovery periods, right? One of my favorite examples of this is using like the 1-to-1 work to rest ratio, okay? So a 1-to-1, oh my God, stop it. 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. So what's nice about this is like you get the benefits of doing like interval training, which is like it's intellectually stimulating, it keeps the workout fresh, while also like varying your intensity enough to feel like you can kind of push yourself. But because you're only doing like a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio, like 1 minute on, 1 minute off, that's not really like giving you, you're working so intensely in like that 1 minute and like you're not really taking that much recovery. So it ends up resulting in you being pretty much aerobic the entire time. You're working a lot of type 1 fibers here. And you're going to lose intensity overall. This also works at it's a 1-to-1 or even a 1 to 1/2. Hold on one second. Oh, hey. I know this is so picky, but superscript. Boop. Oh, no, I don't like that either. Yeah, 1 to 1/2 work to rest ratio. That's fine. So that's a really good example there. Like you're not taking very much rest. You're resting, but it's very, very, very limited. So it ends up pushing your aerobic system. The more rest you take, the harder you can work. And the harder you can work, the more likely you're targeting your anaerobic interval training, your anaerobic system, right? So anaerobic interval training, also known as HIIT, more commonly referred to as HIIT training or high intensity interval training, involves shorter, more intense bouts of exercise ranging from 15 to 90 seconds interspersed with moderate to, actually, just say moderate, recovery. Okay, so a good example of this would be like a 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 work to rest ratios. Okay, so that's your anaerobic interval training. Now, here's the biggest mistake that a lot of people make when they're doing like anaerobic interval training is they'll do like a full, they'll like treat these like full minutes, which is fine. Like if you're actually really good at glycolysis, like if you're pretty good at like maintaining that, 1 minute on, 2 minutes off is a great way to ensure that you're able to work really hard in that 1 minute on. But if you keep it a little shorter, and if you go like 30 seconds on, 60 seconds off, that's probably going to be a little more effective because like your 30-second mark is really like prime glycolysis right there, right? Or even like 30 seconds on, 90 seconds off, or 30 seconds on, 2.5 minutes off. Now this version here is very anaerobic. This is where we're looking kind of at the difference. If we look at like the three of these here, we're really looking at, and I'm not going to go too far into this, but we're looking at like training aerobic glycolysis here, and then very much like anaerobic, which is still like a form of glycolysis, but it's like a 1-to-2 ratio straddling just barely the difference between these two, right? Whereas a 1-to-3 ratio is very clearly anaerobic. And so this is very much like your anaerobic glycolysis. And this is probably targeting your ATP-PC system. Like if you're taking like a 15-second work followed by a minute and 15 seconds of rest, that's pretty intense. You should be working as absolutely hard as you can in that 15 seconds. And that's just kind of the difference here. And so if you were to actually like vary between these three, let's say you have 3 days of cardio, where maybe like this is like sprinting on a field, this is just generally like jogging, like, you know, relatively fast, maybe for distance. I'm sorry, this is relatively fast for distance, and then this is like hill training. That's a really good way to train your anaerobic system when it comes to like things like running. Or maybe this is like low resistance, but you're focusing on pedaling faster on like a spin bike. This is like a combination of like the two. And then this one is like super high resistance, like the spin bike's really, really heavy, and you're trying to do these like short little sprints. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes. So
Difference
like
between those?
the 15-second, Brad, that would be like 90% of your.
Yeah, you'd want, I mean, if you're doing as short as 15 seconds, you should be, I mean, honestly, yeah, 90%, I'd say 95% of your max speed.
Okay.
If you're only doing 15 seconds of work, that should be super intense. And that's why like, and honestly, guys, you probably won't do that with too many of like your obese clientele, at least in the beginning. Like that is something, this is why we start in zone 1 with our level 1 clients, zone 2 for our level 2 clients, zone 3 for our level 3 clients, right? We don't want to get into zone 3 with somebody who's brand new to this stuff, you know?
Gosh, you know, I have much better understanding with what you just went over from like months ago. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now, we got another fun one here. We got multi-mode training. Has anybody ever done this? Do you ever cardio hop? Anybody like a cardio hopper at the gym? I used to do this for fun every now and then, but I kind of just like running. But on days where like I would get kind of bored and be stuck in a gym or something, I would totally do multi-mode training because it's just so much fun. And this is where you use different modalities in one workout. So it's like, all right, I'm going to go do 5 minutes on a treadmill. I'm going to go do 5 minutes on the elliptical. I'm going to do 5 minutes on the Stairmaster. And you just kind of work your way around the gym and do like a bunch of different types of cardio. It's cool. I used to have a workout, actually. I called it the cardio sampler, and it was like homework for my clients. And it was where I would make them do a 1/4 mile run as fast as they could. So they had to do a 1/4 mile on the treadmill, and then they had to go do like 25 like body weight squats, 25 modified push-ups. It was like one part for each body, and like blah 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 blah, and there was 25 of everything. And then they had to go do a 1/4 mile on the elliptical, and then like 25 of everything again. And eventually it would be like 400-meter row and a 1/4 mile on the Jacob's ladder. And so it was like all like 4 of these different types of things. Then they had to do like these, 25 repetitions of these 4 exercises. And so it was like blending multi-mode training with our cluster sets, and it was kind of a fun little workout. Not the best way to build strength, just a great way to burn a bunch of calories. So multi-mode training involves using various modalities of cardio within one session, right? Running, elliptical, spin bike, etc. So that's multi-mode training. Those are kind of fun. And then we've got stepwise, which is more commonly referred to as pyramid training. This format involves incremental increases or decreases in activity over a different aerobic spectrum. So this is really great. Like stepwise training is a great way. Like if you are trying to increase like your intensity and like build your endurance, this is really great. And so let's say you get on a treadmill and you set it to, I don't know, let's say 5 miles an hour, right? That's a relatively like, maybe you're just up to a kind of a slow jog. And so every minute on the minute, you are gonna raise the incline by 1. And so it's just like, boop, 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 boop. That is stepwise training. And so like I used to do a cardio class. It was called, what do we call it? We called it mountain. And it was just where you would do these 8-minute builds. And so it'd be like, everybody's gonna pick a speed and they are gonna maintain that speed. And then every minute on the minute for 8 minutes, we're gonna increase intensity and we're gonna do 4 rounds. We reset 4 times. And a lot of people would do that. And then like, I would always encourage people to multi-mode it. You know, I'd be like, all right, great. Do your first mountain on the elliptical, do your second mountain on the treadmill, do your third mountain on the spin bike, you know? It's just kind of a fun way to do it. Didn't have to do it that way, but it was like, you know, just a good way to like keep intellectually stimulated. And then we got my favorite, which is going to be mixed tempo or fartlek training, which is just the greatest, silliest word. Fartlek is a Swedish word that means speed play, as its direct translation. And what this means is that you are going to involve various speeds throughout your workout. So this is where actually you're going to kind of blend aerobic and anaerobic together. So it involves mixing different tempos and different energy systems within one workout. So good examples of this would be like doing a 30-second sprint followed by 30 seconds of recovery, followed by a 60-second sprint followed by a 60-second recovery, and then a 90-second sprint, if you can't sprint for 90 seconds, but a 90-second hard run followed by 90 seconds of recovery. And so like you are kind of varying your intensity, or maybe it would be a 200-meter run followed by 200 recover, 400 run, 400 recover, 600, 600, and then you would actually kind of go back down as well. So you probably go back to 400 to 400, and then you would reset the whole circuit. And so it'd be like I used to do a cardio class that was 30, 30, 60, 60, 90, 90, 60, 60, and that was 1 round. And then you would repeat as many rounds as you could. And that takes, I used to know this off the top of my freaking head. I think you could do 4 rounds in 28 minutes, I think. 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1 plus 1. 8 minutes, 32 minutes, that's what it was. So it was great. You could do 4 rounds in 32 minutes. You had a 5-minute warm-up plus a 5-minute cool down. You get yourself a 45-minute cardio routine. Pretty good stuff, you know? And it's just a really, really great, really great calorie burn. And what's really cool is fartlek training is actually, it was originally, not to give you too big of a history lesson here, but it was originally used for marathoners. And what they would do is they would make them do distance, because traditional marathon training was like, hey, week 1, you're going to run 2 miles. Week 2, you're going to run 3 miles. Week 3, you know, and you would just amp it up. Those numbers are horribly inaccurate, but whatever. And what you would do is like for those 2 mile, what they did is they started saying, okay, well, your 2 miles, we're going to do it on a track today. and you're going to do it every time you cross this white line. You're either going to go fast or you're going to go slow. And so like they would go 200, they would go like this many meters. And then when they crossed it, they had to do the next lap really fast. Then they had to do the next lap slow. And then they were like, okay, well, now we're going to move the lines around. And so it became 200-meter sprint, 200 recover, 400 sprint, 400 recover. And they noticed that their time started dropping. And it's a great way to increase your speed. So we love fartlek training. We love to say it too. I'm a child. Then you have split routine systems. And this is just breaking it. This is not so much like an actual system, but this is basically breaking cardio sessions up into multiple sessions per day. Sessions into multiple training sessions per day rather than one big session. So this is where like you might go for 3 10-minute walks throughout the day. That's a really good way to get your cardio in. It has been proven and shown that like multiple rounds of cardio burn the same number of calories as one large session. You are not going to burn more calories just because you're doing a longer cardio session. That's not how muscle recruitment and ATP production works, right? If you're recruiting muscle for 10 minutes, 3 times, that is the same as recruiting that muscle for 30 minutes straight. At least in terms of calorie burn. Now, are you building your endurance? Of course not, right? Those are different things. They're different concepts. So I'm not saying they're the same. I'm saying calorically they burn the same, right? Don't misinterpret. Now that we know a whole bunch of different cardio stuff, we got to make it harder. Right? We got to focus on progression. We know that progression is really important for cardio and strength training, right? So exercise should always focus upon challenging through a systematic progression. You're not just going to make it harder, you're going to make it harder in specific ways. That way we don't risk overtraining our clients. So initial programs should focus on progressing at a rate of about 10% or 5 to 10 minutes of total volume every 1 to 2 weeks. So let's say you got a client who's just learning how to jog for the first time, right? What you're going to do is you're going to focus on building them up by being like, all right, I just want you to get out there and try to run consistently. Try to go for 10 minutes straight if you can without having to stop to a walk. If that means that like your pace is this, but you're still just picking your feet up in a jogging style, I'll take it. Whatever I can get, okay? I want you to build up your endurance. And then next week, it's like, all right, that was 10 minutes. This week, we're going to do 11 minutes, right? Every 1 to 2 weeks, you're going to increase it by about 10%. And that's how, for those of you who, I'm thinking of one student in particular, who have said like, I can't run long distances. This is how you do it. You've probably progressed a little bit too quickly. Most people tend to like run really hard, and then they never get a chance to get to like the 2-minute marker. And that 2-minute marker is where you really kicked into your aerobic metabolism. And so like, if you're running so hard that you're recruiting like anaerobic metabolism, of course you can't get aerobic. You've built up too much lactic acid too quickly. So you want to go relatively slowly, even if it involves like, you know, pretty low speeds. So the OPT model, right? If we know that progression is super important and we know that systematically progressing is super important, this is where the OPT model comes in, right? We want to incorporate everything. We want to progress everybody from this to that, and we want to do it in a progression that makes sense. So OPT model, I just gotta remember my definition because this actually, oh, I guess this is it actually. The NASM OPT model, right? Actually, I'll put the whole name up here just because we never use it. Optimum Performance Training OPT model is an evidence, I'm not going to put that, a systematic progression that properly prepares the body for greater intensities and volumes of work. Look, I love powerlifting. I think it's super, super fun. I never really got into it for a long time. I'm still not a big fan of like hypertrophy training, and I like powerlifting in certain ways. It took me a little while to figure out how to get passionate about powerlifting. What I ended up finding is that like I need to write every scrap of information down as I'm going through a powerlifting routine, because that is intellectual stimulation. I like to see my graph and like chart my strength as it goes up. That is stimulating to me, right? Whereas normally, like the way I like to work out, I like to leave the gym sweaty, dirty, and bloody. Like that is what I think working out is. Like that's my mental image, right? I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm just saying like the way I created, like what is working out? And it's like, oh, it's that thing where you destroy yourself as hard as you can in 1 hour. I don't know. That's just like, that's why I like obstacle course racing. It's why I like ultimate so much. Cause like inevitably I'm walking home every week like, oh man, that was a great one today. You know, and some people hate that. Some people like working out is their zen. And some people will work out, that's their way to relax. That's their way to relieve stress, or, you know, that's how they get rid of, you know, that's how they get their temper out for the week, you know. Everybody's got like a different mental picture, right? But here's the thing. Doesn't matter what that is, we always want to find, you know, how to make that fun and engaging while also systematic and safe. Because a lot of people really like powerlifting. They like seeing their lifts go up, right? That's a big thing that most people want. So most people will jump into a powerlifting program right out the gate. Like they've never touched a barbell before and they're doing 5 sets of 5 reps, you know? There's literally a very famous program, which by the way is a decent program, I'm not knocking it, called Starting Strength. And the program is good, but I hate the name. Like, it is not where you should start. And I know I'm gonna get like some people are would flame me for saying that, but like I guarantee we have strong evidence to suggest, I'm not gonna say proof, but we have strong evidence to suggest that jumping into a powerlifting routine your first time in the gym will result in 9 out of 10 times more injuries than building yourself up and slowly progressing. So we are going to focus on integrated training. Which is going to incorporate all parts of a training program as a progressive system in multiple planes of motion, which they're not mentioning here, but it is important. So that is going to be flexibility, core, balance, reactive, more commonly known as plyometric, speed, agility, quickness, resistance training, which we spend most of our time talking about, and cardiorespiratory training. So we need to be able to build all of these things, right? And so we're going to take our clients through a progression, and you guys will recognize this, but the OPT model is basically this really cool little staircase that is broken into 3 levels: stabilization, strength, and power, and 5 different phases: stabilization endurance, strength endurance, hypertrophy, max strength, and power. These phases correspond really well with client goals, and these levels correspond really well with physiologic adaptations. So like, not that hypertrophy and max strength aren't physiologic adaptations, but if you kind of separate those 2 concepts in your brain, you start to kind of be able to understand the OPT model really clearly. So stabilization adaptations are things that are focused on proprioception and neuromuscular efficiency. Strength adaptations focus on prime mover strength, and power adaptations focus on prime mover rate of force production. And then the different types of strength that we can build are everything from an endurance style to muscle growth to motor unit recruitment. And then here's motor unit recruitment speed, right? So we can see that like we want to work our way up this staircase. We want to build slowly over time. And so we're going to have different intensities and different rest ranges and different reps and different sets, training volume. We're going to have different versions of all of these things. And then when we go back to like our flexibility training and our core training and speed, agility, and quickness training, these here are meant to support our overall resistance training, right? Like for instance, sometimes people wonder, it's like, why not just do static stretches all the time, right? If static stretches are the ones that tend to improve range of motion better than any other type of flexibility, why aren't we just constantly focusing that on all 3 levels of the OPT model? And it's like, well, we don't want to do static stretching, which does improve range of motion, if we are going to be doing max strength training, because our priority is to increase our strength. And static stretches turn your nervous system off, which reduces strength. So if you're training to like increase your strength, but you've reduced your strength before you started, you shot yourself in the foot before you walked into the gym. So instead, we're going to focus on active stretches during a strength training program. Because a strength level program, I should say, it's all strength training. We're gonna focus on active stretches because then we're getting improved range of motion, although like it's not our primary focus, and we are still seeing prime mover strength not be inhibited. So we can focus on our main goal. And then like in the power phase, we do dynamic stretches because that actually increases motor unit recruitment and increases the speed at which your muscles can fire, which when you're doing power training is exactly our goal. So it all supports itself. And the same thing is true with the cardio. The reason we do steady state cardio with stabilization is because stabilization is high repetition. So that training support, that energy system supports our strength training. A 1-to-2 ratio, which or 1-to-2, 1-to-3 ratio, which is what we normally see in like zone 2 cardio training, supports glycolysis very, very well. And so that works really well with strength endurance, hypertrophy, and max strength. And then a 1-to-3 ratio supports our ATP-PC system really well, which is going to support power training. So they're all tied together. Each phase has specific intensities that metabolically, flexibility-wise, and strength-wise all tie together and support each other. And that's how the OPT model was arranged. There's the story behind why we created this. So we're going to go through each of these just really quickly here. So stabilization level, by definition, is going to focus on the adaptation of stabilization, okay? So really the goal here is, learn how to control your body, right? That's our goal. We want to focus on correcting muscle imbalances, improving our stability of core musculature. This is why we focus on not moving our spine in core stabilization exercises. I'm not focused on getting really good at all this. I'm focusing on getting really good at catching something and stabilizing and holding everything in place the way it's supposed to. Oh my God. Totally. This is, I'm going to put this up here. Actually, I'll put it in the chat. If you guys want a really great hour-long podcast to listen to, Stuart McGill was just on Squat University's podcast. He is like the guru when it comes to core stability. He came up with the McGill Big Three, which you guys know I'm a big fan of if you've ever been in any of my classes. He came up with basically, it is rather than just focusing on planks and things like that, he saw greater activation in what he calls a McGill sit-up, which is basically where you put your hands under your low back and you do just a very small crunch and hold your spine in place and then go back down. And so you would crunch and then hold it in place. And he found greater activation in that than he did in a traditional plank. He pairs that up with side planks because then you get really great activation of your oblique musculature. And then he also did the bird dog. And so you're basically addressing stability. If you think of like your core as like a box, right? you're addressing the front, back, and sides, tops and bottoms of that box. And he is like the guru. He's the physical therapist when it comes to core stabilization. So he just did an episode of he was on Squat University's podcast. It's about an hour long. If you guys get a chance, I listened to it while I was working out on Tuesday. It is awesome. So anyway, it is like a 54-minute podcast, which is kind of funny. He's like, we're going to talk about core stability for 54 minutes. But he's great. So we also want to prepare our muscles, tendons, ligaments, and other soft tissue for the greater levels of exercise that are to come, right? So in the stabilization level, you're only going to have one phase of training. You're going to have stabilization. You're going to have phase 1 here, which is going to be stabilization endurance, okay? And this is going to be the phase of training that creates optimum levels of stabilization and postural control. That is all in bold, and I don't know why. Unbold it. Yes. Yeah, do it, man. It's awesome. In order to train into phase 1, we want to use multiplanar, proprioceptively enriched, which really just means wobbly, environments in order to recruit muscle stabilizers, right? So that's the whole goal of phase 1. We're really just focusing on like unstable exercises, and that's how we build stability, right? Now you're gonna notice here, oh, never mind, I did fix it. Never mind, you're not gonna notice anything. So next level we've got is the strength level. Right, which is going to focus on the adaptation of force production. Right, we are looking at strength. And so we are trying to increase core musculature's ability to move the spine under heavier loads. We want to focus on the load-bearing capabilities of our muscles. And we're primarily going to shift our focus from being very much an aerobic energy system to being more of an anaerobic energy system. So the strength level is going to focus primarily in 3 different ways. We're going to see phase 2, which is strength endurance, right? And that's going to focus on further improving stabilization while increasing force production. So phase 2, honestly, I like to think of it as like phase 1.5, because you're kind of like moving just outside of stabilization, but you're still using stabilization exercises actually. You're gonna pair a stabilization exercise with a strength exercise. So you do a strength exercise first, and you pair it for a stabilization exercise second. And that way you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting force production while also still focusing on stability. So if I did like a heavy bench press for 12 repetitions, racked it, and then immediately dropped to the floor and did a one-legged push-up, right, at a super slow 4-2-1 tempo, I've paired those two together, almost feeling like a drop set. And that's going to help me build endurance, because it's like, hey, you thought you were done with your chest? No, you're not. Keep going. While also still getting some of the benefit of lifting really heavy in the first lift, right? So this is going to use superset techniques, where a strength exercise that focuses on force production is paired with a stabilization exercise focused on endurance and stability. Then we've also got within the strength level phase 3 here, which is going to be hypertrophy.
Brad, let this out. I'm so excited with all the information you're going over, because I know Tree had a whole different approach to it, but it's like, yeah, I'm seeing the bigger picture with how this all works.
Yeah, I mean, here's the like there's a lot of different approaches out there, you know, and I'm not saying that all the other ones are wrong, you know, but like this has, in Nassim's opinion, this is taking, you're putting yourself in a lot of win-win scenarios. You're putting yourself in like the best of both of a lot of different scenarios, and you are progressing at a rate that your body's really designed to progress at, you know. This builds a foundation for this, which builds a foundation for this, you know? Oops. And you can move around different OPT levels depending on what your goals are. So this is the focus for hypertrophy. The focus is on high levels of volume to build hypertrophy. Cellular, yeah, we'll say just muscle size. I don't want to just say hypertrophy here, but that really is what it is. So this is going to force cellular changes that result in an increased muscle size gains. Right? That's what we're going for here. Muscle gains. And that's really the main goal of hypertrophy. I know it's spelled wrong. You're going to have to get used to it, Microsoft Word. All right. Then we got phase 4. Which is max strength, where the focus is on, so it develops maximal motor, actually, no, that's not what I want to put just yet. Develops maximal strength by increasing force production, okay? So focuses on further increasing motor unit recruitment. Focus on increasing motor unit recruitment, firing rate, and synchronization in order to develop maximal intensities. This is your powerlifting, right? Not appropriate for all clients. In fact, a lot of times you are going to, with your obese clientele, particularly in weight loss, phase 4 is really not that awesome of a phase. Super heavy lifting just isn't great for our obese clientele because number one, there's already a lot of tissue load on the body. And number two, core stability becomes really challenging when there's like a lot of abdominal fat. And so that can actually modify how individuals lift, which can be very unsafe. The other thing is max strength lifting does not burn very many calories. It is often really intense work followed by massive periods of rest. And so the overall caloric burn is just relatively low. So there's a lot of reasons we're probably going to skip this phase of training with most of our obese clientele. Now, that being said, some people might be going, I don't know, I've seen like weight loss clients and they work, you know, they lifted heavy weights. I think that's true, but hypertrophy also lifts pretty heavy weights, just not maximally heavy weights. That's the difference. Like all of strength is heavy, but max strength is heavy with a side of heavy, right? And then in the power level, right? This is going to be a level that is primarily focuses on the adaptation of rate of force production, okay? So the idea here is that we are going to increase the velocity of our movements by further increasing motor unit activation, synchronization, and firing rate. So the power phase is going to consist of phase 5, so power, right? So the power level only has one phase, similar to the stabilization level. And what we're going to see in phase, what have I done? What we're going to see in phase 5, better save, is going to be more superset techniques, very similar to strength endurance. So focuses on developing, on further developing motor unit recruitment, firing rate, and synchronization with the goal of developing maximal power. And we know that power is a formula. Power equals force times velocity, right? So we are addressing both of those in the power phase by using superset techniques. So it uses superset techniques where a max strength exercise is paired with a power exercise in order to address both sides of the power equation, right? So you would do, earlier we talked about developing strength endurance by doing a bench press paired with a single leg push-up. Well, now we're gonna pair that bench press with a clap push-up, which is gonna be super explosive, right? So a lot of times you're gonna use maximal intensities of 85 to 100%, which is what we used in max strength, paired with intensities of 30 to 45%. I'm just gonna put a little asterisk here. It should be noted, with weight loss clientele, the maximal strength portion of the lift is often eliminated in order to only focus on velocity. So in obese clientele, a lot of times you'll actually get the, again, because max strength lifts tend to be somewhat unsafe, you're going to end up reducing those and only focusing on velocity. And that's how a lot of people approach power training. Most people just do the explosive stuff. And I actually have nothing against that, but it should always be noted that like the traditional way to effectively train for power is to address both sides of the equation, force and velocity. Rather than just velocity alone. That's why like sometimes you'll hear people be like, man, I've been trying to learn how to dunk a basketball for years and I've done all this like, you know, explosive squats and ice skaters and like step ups to explosions. I've done all this stuff and I'm just not able to get it. And it's like, you've addressed the velocity side of things and your muscles are fast, but they're not very powerful. So there's a difference between velocity and power. Power is velocity times force. So let's lift really, really heavy on a barbell squat and a deadlift and see if like building up your leg strength and split squats and things like that will help enhance, like by shifting the force curve, you're going to shift your power curve. And now that should give you both sides of the equation. But with our obese clientele, going all the way back to what we talked about earlier, you know, when we're doing like metabolic resistance training, you'll probably just end up doing a lot of power stuff all by itself. And that's still great. It's still really good. You're still getting half the equation. It's just not optimal, right? There's a kind of a difference between those two. All right, looking at cardio. So those are, that's very much all related to our strength training. Looking at integrated cardio training, right? Going back to what we talked about earlier, using our different, where did I put it? Using our different types of cardio like steady state, aerobic, anaerobic, multimode, we can apply all that using some NASM protocols of stage training. So stage training is a cardiovascular system that uses different heart rate training zones in order to target different types of metabolism, right? So it is similar in structure to the OPT model. So we have got stage 1 training, right? And that's going to consist of zone 1, which is going to be 65 to 75. I don't want to do this. That's going to be stage 1, which is going to be zone 1, which will, I guess I'll just do it like this, which will consist of 65 to 75% heart rate max, or you can think of that as a 12 to 13 on the RPE scale, or you can think of this as walking or jogging, right? Then we've got stage 2 cardiorespiratory training, right? And that's going to focus on zone 2, which is going to be 76 to 85% heart rate max, or a 14 to 16 on the RPE scale. And you can think of this as like group exercise, classes, spin classes, etc., boot camps, things like that. And then we've got our stage, oh, and that's also going to consist of zone 1 for recovery. So stage 2 will actually involve both, not just the ones. You'll often work in zone 2 and recover in zone 1. And then we got stage 3 cardiorespiratory training, right? And that's going to consist of zone 3, right? And that's going to be 86 to 95% heart rate max, or a 17 to 19 on the RPE scale. And this is things like sprinting, right? Working as hard as you can. And then you will recover in zone 2 and zone 1, which are used for recovery, right? So it's going to be a blend. So here's an example of a zone 1 cardio routine. It's pretty simple. Step 1, start going. There is no step 2. So 5 to 10 minute warm up below zone 1, probably 50, 60% of your heart rate. Then you're going to do 30 to 60 minutes, somewhere between 65 and 75% of your heart rate max. And then you're going to cool down. Piece of cake. Stage 2, once you've kind of built that aerobic foundation, now we're going to further increase that capacity by moving into, stage 2, you're going to further increase that by working either harder speed, more incline, higher resistance, whatever, into your zone 2. And so this is an example of where you do 5 to 10 minutes of warming up, then you move 1 minute just below your lactate threshold in that 76 to 85% heart rate max, and then recover for 3 minutes. So this is a 1 to 3 ratio. But you could still work in stage 2 using like a 1 to 2 ratio. But if you start using a 1 to 1, that starts getting so low that you'll end up like, you'll find that like your first one maybe starts here, and then like your second one will be like here, and then eventually you're just kind of staying in the yellow zone the whole time because you're not really recovering very well. And then stage 3 is for the advanced client who has a pretty good cardiovascular base, and they are going to work in a combination of zones 3 and 2. And this is where, and honestly zone 1 as well, where you are working at like a very high intensity and then recovering in your lower intensities. This is a pretty advanced version where like they're recovering to 85%. This is a hell of a cardio workout that they're giving an example of here. Most of the time you'll end up going 3, down to 2, down to 1, back to 3. And that's where like, I always like, if I'm on like a treadmill, I always think it's kind of fun to actually do like an uphill sprint. Oh my God, stop it, internet. Do like an uphill sprint followed by like a sprint, but no uphill, followed by like a no uphill, slow, recovery walk, and then repeat. That's always a really great way to use all 3 zones. So, stage training, really, really great, not only because like by varying those intensities, you are training different energy systems, but it also ensures that you are not going to overtrain. You're not just doing the hard stuff consistently. You're doing hard stuff and then you are giving your body time to recover, doing the quote unquote easy stuff, right? And so you're training different metabolic systems and you are training, different intensities, giving your body time to recover. And it never starts overtraining, which is something we really want to avoid, right? We also really like circuit training. Circuit training is also really effective, right? And this is performing, like I said, one exercise after the other, after the other, after the other. And so you can do this. Here's some really good sample programs I forgot. I did this earlier and I didn't need to. These are really good sample programs. I'm going to go back up to circuit training over here that use different styles of exercises, right? So an example, like the push-up, like the chest press, like the medicine ball chest pass, right? So there's a ball chest press followed by a bench chest press followed by a medicine ball chest pass. Right, that would be using, that would be like month 1, month 2, month 3. And that's a really effective way to train as well. By the way, if you wanted to, Irene, like you were asking if could you blend these things together, you could actually do this way, right? You would call that like a simple to complex set where you do like a stabilization exercise, then a strength exercise, then a power exercise. You could do that in one routine. I don't really always recommend it just because you're blending so much stuff together. You're not being very specific. You're kind of pulling in a bunch of different directions. It's usually a little bit better to focus on one thing at a time. But in general, calorie burn wise, that's great. So we love circuit training for a lot of different reasons because it has been shown to be just as effective as traditional cardio and improve your overall fitness levels. It creates the greater levels of EPOC actually. Your body will actually consume more oxygen after a circuit routine than it would after just a normal cardio. No worries, Frankie. We're about like a minute out. So we'll see you Monday, man. Have a great weekend. And it's a near identical caloric expenditure. So do you have to get on a treadmill? You never heard me say that. So here's a really good example of like how to use circuit training and kind of pair it with like a general cardio routine. This is a template that I have used. Like when I was beginning as like a trainer and I saw this example in my textbook, I pretty much just copied this and just did this with my clients and had a lot of success. When I was still very green and really didn't know what I was doing. And it's a great 60-minute session that you can do with your clients. And so you just focus on 5 to 10 minutes of flexibility training, get your client on a treadmill for 5 to 10 minutes, do a little bit of circuit training, get them back on the treadmill, get them stretched out at the end, send them out the door. Eventually, my style changed over the years, but this is a great way if calorie burn is your focus, this works super, super well. Strength level clients that are more intermediate, you would just do a stage 2 cardio routine and your movements would be strength based. And if it's an advanced client who's in the power phase, same concept, but you would focus on stage 3 cardio training, circuit training that uses a lot of like power movements, stage 2 cardio training at the end, and then kick them out of the gym. Oh, and by the way, the flexibility changes too, right? We use SMR and static stretches. We use SMR and active stretches. We use SMR and dynamic stretches. So these are pretty good basic little templates that you can find in those PowerPoints. You guys, I'm sure already know how to do this because we've been over it a million times, like in our OPT sheets. But it's a nice little little image to keep in your head of like, what order do I go in? How do I make the session flow? That's a great little way to stick to it. So in summary of our 43 program design slides, and what is it? How many notes did we get today? 8 pages of notes. We know that exercise has a bunch of different benefits, and if we focus on combining them together, we're going to increase our energy expenditure, and hopefully we are not going to reduce our NEAT by too much. We do know that it is just calories in versus calories out. So we want to make sure that in order to not work too hard, we can increase our energy expenditure in the gym, but we don't want to tank our NEAT levels. And so by using an integrated training approach, we're not going to be overtraining. And when you're overtraining, you just don't know that you are overtraining. And what I mean by that is when you're just I feel like there's just water behind my eyes all day. And I feel like I'm just a little tired and I've always got crusties. Your brain's trying to go yeah, I want you to sleep. Go to sleep. Lay down. You just feel drained. You are overtraining. If you consistently feel like that throughout the day, chances are you're working so hard that you are reducing your progress. So work harder in the gym, but also rest harder out of the gym. Work hard, rest hard, and go through cycles, right? I really like focusing on a low volume routine for a little while, a medium volume routine, and then I like to plateau with a high volume, take a little deload week where I don't even do strength training and I just do a little bit of yoga, a little bit of cardio, you know, something. I usually go play some sports, take a beach day, 2 weeks, and then I get right back in the gym and then recycle it, you know, and move all my intensities up. That ensures that you never tank your NEAT, and it ensures that you don't plateau. So our OPT model is going to help you do that because you can move through different styles of training consistently. Meanwhile, using stage training can also help us do that because, again, you're going to move through different intensities progressively. All right. That'll do it. How you guys feeling?
Brad? Oh,
What's up?
my reception kind of got a little spotty.
Oh.
At the end, when you cover the zone 3, what is spring?
Did I say spring?
Sprint.
Spring. Because after the, it's like 86 to 95 heart
God
rate.
dang it. Irene, I'm glad you're here to catch all my dumb typing errors.
No,
That's
it's like my
printing.
reception was going on and off, and I just didn't catch everything you were
No,
saying.
no. That's just me being a, you know, poor typist and poor speller, and Microsoft Word being like, hey, buddy, that's not a word. Did you mean spring? I was like, no, I meant sprinting.
I
Yeah.
I was like,
No. That's a good question. Yeah. That was just a typing error. But yes, sprinting is very much your zone 3. There's a different, like jogging, running, sprinting.
that would be, okay, for the zone 3 cardio training, that would be.
Sprinting, yep. And then zone 2 is like running. Zone 3 is like jogging or walking. I guess
Gosh.
technically some people would think of it as walking, jogging, running. That's good too. But yeah, that'll do it, guys. Any other questions? Any other typing errors? So I probably have more. There's got to be so many that I don't catch. Jay Howard was always really good about being like, hey man, you goofed up on the homework. And I was like, oh. All right, guys, so I'll go ahead and end the recording. See y'all on Monday.